They say the mind is a fortress, but they're wrong. It's a cage. I've been in this room for 700 days, and today, the lock finally broke. You're about to hear a recording that was never supposed to leave these walls. A story of a man, a girl, and a ledger written in red ink. But pay attention, because in this room, even the shadows are lying to you. This is the truth about Subject 402. Don't look away from me. Why did you stop the tape? I saw your hand move. You think I'm spinning a fantasy, but I'm the only one in this room telling the truth. I saw the girl. I saw where they put her. If you stop recording now, you're an accomplice to what happens at midnight. These lights are too bright. It feels like they're stripping away every layer of the truth. Sit down, Doctor. We aren't finished yet. I haven't moved, Caleb, and there is no tape recorder. You're agitated again. Your eyes keep darting toward the corner of the room like there's someone else standing there. There isn't. It's just you and me. You mentioned the girl and the ledger. We've checked the police reports from that night at the docks. No one was there. You were found alone, clutching a rusted key and whispering to a shadow. Alone. You're lying. I was behind the shipping crate. I heard the water hitting the pier and smelled the salt and the rot. I saw the man in the gray coat, the one who didn't have a reflection in the puddles. He handed her the ledger, and she looked terrified. I wasn't whispering to a shadow. I was talking to you. You were right there, telling me to stay quiet. Why are you pretending you weren't there? Caleb, focus on my voice. You say I was at the docks. Look at my hands. Do you see a pen? Do you see a notepad? You keep glancing at my desk, but tell me, what color is it? What is sitting on it? You're constructing a reality to shield yourself from a memory. The truth is, I am the only one who listened when you were 6 years old, hiding in that closet. Let's talk about the closet. Let's talk about what you actually witnessed. The closet. No, that's a cheap trick. You want to dig up the protector again, just to prove I'm broken? I'm not broken. I'm a witness. I have the final piece of the puzzle. The one the detectives are dying for, but I'll only tell you. Because you're the only one who understands why the man in the gray coat had no face. Wait, why is the room getting smaller? Stay in the light, Doctor. Don't let the shadows touch you. Fine. You want to talk about 1998? The floorboards were ice under my bare feet. I wasn't supposed to be awake, but the house was too quiet. That heavy electric quiet right before a storm. I crawled into the back of the coat closet, pushing through the smell of mothballs and old wool. I wasn't hiding from a monster. I was waiting for my father to come home. But he didn't come home alone. He brought the cold with him. The door opened, and I saw the gray coat for the first time. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He sat at our kitchen table and began to divide things. Envelopes, ledgers. The same kind of ledger I saw at the docks 20 years later. I watched through the crack in the door. I didn't see violence. I saw a trade. I saw my father give away something he could never get back. And then he looked right at the closet. He knew I was there. He knew you were there, didn't he? And that is when your mind started to protect you. You couldn't handle the betrayal on your father's face, so you created a version of the story where he was forced. You created the man in gray to be the villain, so your father could stay a hero. Caleb, look at the walls around you. Notice the texture. Does the light reflect off the surface, or is it absorbed? Tell me what you see when you touch the corner. The walls are fine. Stop trying to distract me. I'm getting close to the names in that ledger. The last name was written in red ink at the very bottom of the page. It's the reason I'm in this office, and you're sitting in that chair. But your voice is changing. It's starting to echo. Why are you repeating my words before I even say them? Stop it. You are making the room feel like it is vibrating. Why is the floor soft? I am echoing you because I am the only one talking. Caleb, the men behind the glass have been recording us for 48 hours. They are waiting for that name. They brought you here because they knew if they left you alone in this room, you would eventually have to talk to yourself. And if you talk to me, you tell them. I am the bridge, Caleb. I am the part of you that knows the secret, and I am finally ready to let it out. You're not real. You're just a voice. But if you're just a voice, how do you know about the red ink? How do you know about the ledger? I can feel my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The air in here is thick. It smells like dust and old paper. The name on the last line, I can see it now. It wasn't a person, it was a place. The names weren't victims, they were destinations. And the last one is where they are hiding. That's it. Caleb, stay with that image. Don't look at the walls. Don't look at the camera tucked into the corner of the ceiling. Just look at the red ink in your mind. Tell me the place. The people behind the glass are leaning in. They've been waiting 48 hours for you to stop fighting me. You think you're protecting the girl by staying silent, but you're only protecting the man in the gray coat. Tell me the name. The Blackwood Foundry. That's what it said. Red ink. It's jagged letters. It was right beneath my father's signature. He didn't sell them out. He gave them a map. I saw him hand it over, and I saw the way he looked at the closet. He wasn't afraid I'd tell. He was afraid I'd follow. And I did follow. That's why I was at the docks. I wasn't just a witness. I was trying to finish what he started. I was trying to find the end of the line. Everything is quiet now. The scratching of the pen has stopped. The chair across from me is gone, and the desk is just a stain on the floor. I'm sitting on the ground, the padding is cold against my back. My voice is hoarse because I've been talking for days, but I thought it had only been minutes. I can see them now. Shadows through the glass. They're moving. They heard me. They're leaving to find the foundry. I feel light. Like a weight has been lifted off my chest, but the space left behind is empty. Is this what it feels like to break? To finally realize the only person looking out for you was a ghost you built out of closet shadows and old memories. I can hear the heavy bolt on the door sliding back. The people coming in now don't look like you. They don't have your voice. They just have quiet eyes and heavy hands. Stay back. They're whispering. They say, I did a good job. They say the girl will be safe because of what I told the wall. It's funny how the mind works. It builds these elaborate stages and fills them with actors just to keep a single secret safe from the person who owns it. I'm tired now. The room is finally still. No more echoes. No more shifting shadows. Just the hum of the lights and the sound of my own breathing. But wait, the door is still open. I hope she knows it was me. Even if I'm never leaving this room, I hope she feels the sun again. My father thought silence was protection, but silence is just a slow growing rot. It took 20 years for me to find the words, and I had to split my soul in half just to speak them. But the truth doesn't care about your sanity. It only cares about being heard. And now the ledger is closed, or so I thought. Why are they coming back in? Wait, sit back down. Why are you looking at the door? I haven't told you about the key yet. You think you figured me out because you know about the closet? You don't know anything. You sit there with your clean collar and your expensive silence, judging the way I survived. But I saw the man in the gray coat drop that key into the harbor. I dived into that freezing black water to get it back. Do you have any idea what that feels like? I'm not judging you, Caleb. I'm trying to find the logic. You say you dived into the harbor, but your records from that night show you were found on the street bone dry. There was no water, no salt, no wet clothes. You were clutching a key, yes, but it was an old house key from your childhood home. Can you explain that? Or is the man in the gray coat just another layer of the skin you're trying to shed? Who are you protecting? That's impossible. I can still feel the salt stinging my eyes. I can hear the metal clinking against my teeth as I held it, so I wouldn't lose it in the dark. If the records say I was dry, then the records are part of the cover-up. They're working with him. Maybe you are working with him. Is that why you keep trying to make me doubt my own skin? You want the key, don't you? You want to know which door it opens? You'll never find it. Look at my hands, Caleb. I am holding nothing. I don't want your key. I want you to tell me why you need the man in the gray coat to be real. Is it because, if he is real, then your father wasn't a traitor? If there is a villain in a gray coat, then your father was just a victim. But we both know that isn't what happened in that kitchen in 1998. There was no one else there. Just your father and Amir, and you, watching from the dark. Be quiet. You weren't there. You didn't see his face when he handed over the envelopes. He wasn't looking at a mirror. He was looking at a ghost. He was looking at the end of everything. And the man in the gray coat thanked him. He whispered something into my father's ear that made him go pale. I've spent 20 years trying to hear that whisper. And now that I finally can, you want to tell me I'm imagining things. Stop smiling at me. He didn't have a face because he was made of everyone's secrets. That's what I told myself back then. In the library, he was just a blur of gray wool and shadow. But in my dreams, he looks like a hole in the world. He stood over the ledger, and his fingers were long, like they'd been stretched by pulling too many strings. You ask why I need him to be real. I need him to be real, because if he isn't, then I'm the one who did those things. And I'm not a monster. Who said anything about monsters? Caleb, I'm interested in the fingers. You say they were stretched. Like someone who spends their life reaching into places they don't belong. Like a thief, or a father, reaching into a closet to pull out a frightened boy. When the man in the gray coat thanked your father, did he use your father's name? Or did he use a name that sounds a lot like yours? Think back to the kitchen. Think about the sound of the chair dragging. He didn't use a name, he whispered a date. October 14th. That was the day after the ledger was supposed to be destroyed. My father was shaking so hard that tea in his cup was splashing onto the table. The man in the gray coat reached out and touched my father's shoulder. It wasn't a comfort. It was a claim. Like he owned him. And then he looked at the closet. He knew I was there. Why are you writing that down? You never write anything down? I'm writing it down because for the first time you're admitting he saw you. Before you said you were invisible. Now you're a tool. A witness to be used. Caleb, look at my pen. Watch it move across the paper. Does the sound remind you of the harbor? Or does it remind you of the sound of the heavy door locking you in this room? You're starting to sweat. Is the man in the gray coat in the room with us right now? Is he standing behind my chair? Don't look back. If you look back, he'll know you can see him. He's right there, isn't he? I can feel the temperature dropping. The lights are flickering, Doctor. Tell me you see the lights flickering? It's him. He followed me from the docks. He's here to take the last page back. He's here to make sure the Blackwood Foundry stays a graveyard. Why aren't you moving? Why are you just sitting there watching me? Help me. Help you, Caleb. Look at me. I'm not moving because I'm not afraid of shadows. I'm not afraid because the man in the gray coat isn't standing behind me. He can't be. Because that man is part of the past. Your father didn't give him a ledger. Your father gave him a final moment of peace before the end. You've built this monster to explain away the silence, but the silence is just that. Silence. Now tell me what happened when you finally opened that closet door. He's not dead. He's right there. I can see the way the light bends around him. He's reaching for the file on your desk. Stop him. Why are you just sitting there, like a statue? And what do you mean he died in 1998? I saw him at the docks. I felt the wool of his coat when I brushed past him. My father didn't give him peace. He gave him me. He sold my future to keep his past quiet. Why are you staring at me like that? Why are your eyes so still? My eyes are still because I'm waiting for you to catch up, Caleb. You say he sold your future, but look at where you are. You have spent more time in these halls than you ever spent at the docks. You keep looking for a villain in a gray coat, but all I see is a man who would rather live in a nightmare than face a quiet room. Whose guilt are you carrying? And why are you so afraid to look at the chair I am sitting in? I am not afraid of the chair. I am afraid of what you are hiding behind it. You talk about guilt, but you don't know the first thing about it. I watched my father's world turn to ash. I watched him sit there and let the fire take him. I didn't take the matches, I didn't start the trail, but you keep trying to rewrite my history. Why do you need me to be the one who held the flame? Is it because the truth is too expensive for you to handle? The truth isn't expensive, Caleb. It is just heavy. You say the stove was left on. You say the curtains caught first. But the fire department found the canisters. They found the trail leading from the kitchen to the very closet where you were hiding. You didn't just want to burn the house. You wanted to burn the evidence of what your father had done. But the man in the gray coat survived. He followed you out of the smoke and into the world. That is a lie. I ran. I ran until my lungs felt like they were full of broken glass. I didn't take the ledger, and I didn't take the matchas. I just wanted the screaming to stop. My father didn't even try to get out. He just sat there in the heat, and he smiled. Why would a man smile when his life is melting around him? He looked at me through the orange glow, and he looked at peace. Why are you staring at me like that? Why are your eyes so cold? My eyes are cold, because I have heard this story 1,000 times, Caleb. Every time we get to the fire, you start to shake. You say he smiled because he was at peace. But maybe he smiled because he knew you were the one who would carry on the work. He gave you a clean slate, and you turned it into a graveyard. Like the docks. Let's talk about the girl. The one you claimed to be saving. Why do the police have your fingerprints on her neck? Fingerprints. I was helping her. I told you. The man in the gray coat was going to put her in the water. I saw him grab her arm. I saw the ledger in his other hand. I didn't start a fire at the docks. I just tried to pull her away. But the man was so strong, he felt like stone. He felt like he was part of me. His hands were my hands. His coat was my skin. Why is the floor moving? Why are the lights changing color? The lights are changing because the session is entering a new phase. Caleb, you've been in this room for hours, and you still haven't given them what they want. You say you were saving her, but she was screaming. She wasn't afraid of the man in the gray coat. She was afraid of you. Who do you think she saw when she looked into your eyes in the rain? Did she see a savior, or did she see the monster from the library? She saw the protector. I told her the ledger was the key. I told her I would take her to the Blackwood Foundry, where they couldn't find her, but she wouldn't listen. I just needed her to be quiet, so he wouldn't hear us. I just needed her to understand that I was the only one left who knew the truth. Why are you standing up? Don't stand up. I can't see your face when you are that tall. You are blocking the light. I am standing up because we are running out of time, Caleb. The people behind the glass are losing patience. They don't want to hear about your childhood or your shadows. They want the location. They want the names on that last page. And if you won't give them to me, they will send someone in who doesn't use a voice to ask questions. Is that what you want? To be left alone with the men in the suits. The men in the suits. I hear them. In the vents. I hear them whispering about Subject 402. They think I am just a puzzle to be solved. But I am the one with the map. The Foundry isn't just a place. It is a memory, and you can't go there without me. You need the doctor to keep me stable. But you are starting to sound nervous. Your voice is cracking. Are you afraid of what happens if I remember the last name? I am not afraid, Caleb. I am concerned. If I walk out that door, I don't come back. The next person who walks in won't ask you about your father. They won't ask you about the closet. They will just take what they need. This is the last chance. Tell me where the girl is. Tell me where you hid the ledger before the police found you. Tell me the name of the street. Tell me the truth before the light goes out. The light didn't go out. It turned red. A low, pulsing hum started vibrating through the floor. The doctor didn't move, but he stopped looking at his notepad. He just stared at me with those blank, clinical eyes. Then, for the first time, a new voice came through a speaker in the ceiling. It was cold, robotic. It didn't ask about my feelings. It didn't ask about the closet. It just asked for the coordinates. Subject 402, please confirm the location of the Blackwood asset. That is what the voice said. Asset. They aren't even calling her a girl anymore. They talk about her like she is a piece of hardware. I looked at the doctor, waiting for him to defend me, but he just sat there. He looked like he was waiting for instructions. Why aren't you saying anything? Tell them I'm not ready. Tell them the smoke is still too thick. The doctor finally spoke, but his voice was different. It was flat, like he was reading from a script. He said that the window for cooperation was closing. He said that if I didn't provide the street name, the transition would begin. I don't know what the transition is, but the air in here just got thin. It feels like the oxygen is being sucked out of the room. Is this part of the therapy, or is this the end? I stood up and kicked the chair. It didn't make a sound when it hit the floor. How is that possible? A heavy wooden chair should crash, but it just slid like it was made of shadow. I ran to the door and grabbed the handle, but there wasn't one. The door was just a smooth gray surface. No seams, no hinges. Just a wall, pretending to be an exit. I turned back to the doctor. Help me. Why is the furniture disappearing? The doctor didn't look up. He said the furniture only exists if I need it to. He said we are beyond the need for comforts now. The voice in the ceiling came back. It said the sedation team was standing by. Caleb, listen to me. If you don't tell them about the Foundry, they are going to reboot your memory. Everything. The docs, the ledger, even the face of the girl. It will all be gone. Is that what you want? To forget her? Forget her. Never. She's the only thing that's real. I remember the red door now. It was on Pier 19, under the bridge where the trains scream all night. The man in the gray coat told me that if I ever spoke the address out loud, the map would burn. But I have to save her. I looked at the ceiling and shouted the address. I gave them what they wanted. I felt the vibrations stop. I felt the air come back. But the doctor didn't smile. He just closed his eyes. He said, I shouldn't have done that. He said that once the information is out, the bridge is no longer needed. The red light turned into a blinding white boat. I heard the sound of heavy boots in the hallway. Real boots this time. The door I couldn't find suddenly hissed open. Two men in dark suits stepped in. They didn't have faces, just black visors reflecting my own terrified expression. They weren't doctors. They grabbed my arms. Their grip was like iron. I looked at the doctor, pleading for him to stop them, but he was fading. Literally fading. I could see the wall through his chest. He whispered that he was sorry. He said he was only the messenger, and the message had been delivered. I tried to fight, but the room was spinning. One of the men pulled out a small black device. He didn't say a word. He just pressed it against my temple. Everything went black. Not the dark of the closet. This was the dark of the deep ocean. I felt like I was falling through layers of my own life. I saw the fire. I saw the docks. I saw the man in the gray coat holding the coloring book. Wait, why was it a coloring book? In my memory, it was a ledger. Why were the names written in crayon? I tried to reach for it, but my hands were tied. I woke up on the floor. The room was different. The padding was everywhere. The walls, the floor, even the ceiling. No desk, no doctor, no red light. Just a small square window made of reinforced glass. I crawled to it and looked out. I didn't see a hallway. I saw a control room. I saw the doctor. He was standing there, but he wasn't a man. He was a mimage on a screen. And standing next to the screen was a man in a gray coat. He was looking right at me, and he was smiling. I hammered my fists against the glass until my knuckles were raw. The man in the gray coat didn't flinch. He just stood there, watching me like a scientist watching a moth in a jar. He wasn't the monster from my dreams anymore. He was something worse. He was the one in charge. I looked for the doctor on the screens, but his image was flickering, turning into static. He was being deleted. They got what they wanted, and now they were cleaning the hard drive. A voice came over a small intercom near the door. It wasn't the robotic voice from before. It was a man. He sounded tired. He told me to sit down and accept the transition. He said that the Blackwood Foundry was empty. He said that when the team arrived at Pier 19, there was nothing there but a pile of rusted scrap and an old coloring book. He asked me why I lied. I didn't lie. I saw her there. I saw the red door. The man behind the glass shook his head. He pressed a button, and a photo appeared on the screen where the doctor used to be. It was a picture of the foundry. It was a ruin. It looked like it had been abandoned since the 50s. There was no red door. There was no girl. Only a single chair sitting in the middle of a flooded floor. My head started to throb. If the foundry was empty, then where did she go? Or was she ever there at all? I backed away from the window and hit the padded wall. It felt too soft, too forgiving. I remembered the man in the gray coat whispering in my father's ear. I remembered the fire. But the memories were shifting, like sand underwater. The man behind the glass asked me to look at the coloring book. He zoomed in on the photo. On the cover, in a child's messy handwriting, was the name Caleb. It wasn't a ledger. It was mine. I screamed that they were planting evidence. I told them they were trying to break my mind so I would stop looking for the girl. The man in the suit leaned closer to the glass. He said, "There is no girl, Caleb." He said the girl at the docks was a nurse you grabbed in the parking lot. He said the man in the gray coat didn't sell your father out. He said your father was the man in the gray coat, and so are you. I stopped screaming. The silence in the cell was absolute. I looked at my own reflection in the reinforced glass. I tried to see the monster. I tried to see the protector. But I only saw a man in a thin hospital gown with hollow eyes. The man behind the glass said that the doctor was the only way to get me to talk. He said they didn't want a ledger. They wanted to know if I remembered where I hid the matchas, because the fire wasn't over. I laughed. It was a small, broken sound. I told him he was the one lying. I told him that if I was the man in the gray coat, I would know how the story ends, but I don't. I'm stuck in the middle. I asked him who he was. He hesitated. Then he stepped into the light. He wasn't a stranger. He had the same jawline as my father. He had the same tired eyes. He looked like a version of me that had lived 1,000 years. He said his name was Miller. He said he was the director of this facility. He told me that I wasn't a prisoner of a conspiracy. I was a patient of a tragedy. He said that after the fire, I built a world of shadows to keep the heat away. He said the man in the gray coat was a shield. The protector was a sword. And the doctor was the only one allowed to ask why. But the doctor was failing. I was starting to realize I was alone. Miller told me that the sedation was wearing off. He said that in a few minutes the room would change again. He said I would see the office. I would see the desk. I would see the doctor. He told me to try and stay in that reality, because the alternative was too dark for anyone to survive. I looked at the man in the gray coat standing behind Miller. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was reaching for the door handle. Wait. If the room is going to change, don't let it. I'd rather be here in the padding than back in that office with a ghost. I asked Miller about the girl one last time. I begged him to tell me she was real. He looked at the floor and didn't answer. The lights began to pulse. Red, white, red. I felt the floor start to dissolve. The padding was turning into wood. The air was smelling like old books and tobacco. The doctor was coming back. I blinked, and the padding was gone. I was sitting in the leather chair again. The smell of expensive tobacco was so strong it made my eyes water. The doctor was sitting across from me, calmly clicking his silver pen. He looked at me and asked where I had gone for the last 10 minutes. 10 minutes? I told him I was in a cell. I told him I saw Miller. He just sighed and wrote something on his pad. Caleb, you're doing it again. You're retreating into the facility fantasy because the memory of the fire is too close. There is no Miller. There is no control room. You've been sitting right here in front of me. You stopped mid-sentence and stared at the wall for a long time. I was worried I had lost you to the protector. Tell me what you saw in that cell. Was it the man in the gray coat again? I stood up and leaned over his desk. I searched for the seams. I searched for the glitches I saw before. I told him he was a projection. I told him the director said he wasn't real. The doctor didn't flinch. He just leaned back and asked me which was more likely. That a massive corporation is spending millions to trick a broken man, or that a broken man is trying to find a reason why his life turned into ash. Which one is it, doctor? Because I saw the coloring book on your screen. I saw my own name in red crayon. You said the ledger was real, then Miller said it was a toy. One of you is a liar. And if you're a liar, that means the girl is still out there. It means the Blackwood Foundry is exactly where I remember it. Why are you looking at me with pity? I don't want your pity. I want the truth. The truth is that you are exhausted, Caleb. Your mind is fighting itself to keep the secrets safe. You say you saw a coloring book because your brain is trying to diminish the crime. If the ledger is just a toy, then your father wasn't a traitor. If the foundry is just a furnace, then you didn't lose anyone. But we both know the weight of that key in your pocket. It isn't made of plastic. It's rusted steel. I reached into my pocket and gripped the key. It felt cold. It felt real. I told him that Miller said the key was for a house that doesn't exist. The doctor stood up and walked to the window. He pulled back the heavy curtain and showed me the city. He said Miller is the name of the man who died in the fire, Caleb. Miller was your neighbor. He was the one who tried to save your father. Why are you using his name for a villain? My head started to spin. Miller was the neighbor. I remembered a man screaming in the smoke. I remembered a pair of hands reaching for me. But the man behind the glass had those same eyes. I told the doctor he was mixing up the scripts. I told him the facility was leaking into the office. He grabbed my shoulders and forced me to look at the silver pen on his desk. He asked me what I saw in the reflection. I looked at the silver pen. The reflection was distorted, but I saw a face. It wasn't the face of a patient. It was a man in a suit. I saw a clean collar and a tie. For a second, I didn't see myself at all. I saw him, the doctor. I pulled away and stumbled back into the chair. I asked him why the reflection was wrong. He whispered that the reflection is never wrong, Caleb. Only the eyes that look into it are. I'm not you. I can't be you. I'm the one who was in the closet. I'm the one who saw the docs. The doctor sat back down and told me to breathe. He said the dissociation is reaching its peak. He said that if I don't anchor myself to the room, the protector will take over permanently. And if the protector takes over, the location of the girl will be lost forever. He asked me if I wanted her to stay in the dark. I don't want her in the dark. But I don't know who was holding the flashlight. I looked at the doctor, and then I looked at the corner of the room where I saw the camera before. There was nothing there but a shadow. I asked him if he knew the woman's voice I heard earlier, the one who told the guards to hold. He went pale. He asked me how I knew about that voice. He said that voice belongs to someone who hasn't been here in years. The doctor's pen stopped, clicking. He asked me whose voice I heard. I told him it was a woman. She sounded like she was in charge, like she was the one paying for the lights to stay on. He stood up and started pacing. He said that nobody is in charge here but the truth. But his shadow on the wall was wrong. It wasn't pacing with him. It was standing perfectly still, watching me. I asked him why his shadow was broken. My shadow isn't broken, Caleb. Your perception is. You are trying to find glitches in the world because you are afraid of the conversation we are about to have. We need to talk about the night at the docks. Not the fantasy with the shipping crates and the man in the gray coat. The real night. The night you were found screaming at the girl. Do you know who she actually is? Do you know why she was there? I told him. She was the witness. She had the ledger. But as I said the word ledger, the air in the room tasted like copper, like blood. I looked down at my hands, and for a split second, they weren't my hands. They were older, more scarred. I looked back at the doctor, and he was flickering like an old television. He told me to stay with him. He said, if I let go now, I would fall into the cellar of my own mind. I don't want to stay with you. You're the one lying to me. I reached out and grabbed the edge of his mahogany desk, but it felt like fabric. Soft, padded. I pulled my hand back, and the wood grain shifted into a gray quilted pattern. I screamed at him to stop the trick. He stepped closer, and his face began to blur into 1,000 different people. He asked me if I finally realized why he didn't have a name. You're the doctor. That's your name. But as I said it, I realized I never saw a diploma on the wall. I never saw a license. I looked at the silver pen on the desk and saw the reflection again. The man in the suit was gone. Now there was only a man in a gray coat with his face wrapped in shadows. I realized the man in the gray coat wasn't a villain. He was a cage, and the cage was starting to rust. The doctor's voice was an echo now. He said that the protector was created to hold the fire. But the fire is out, Caleb. The house is gone. The father is gone. There is nothing left to guard but a memory of a girl who just wanted to bring you home. He asked me to look at the door, not the gray wall. not the red door of the foundry, just the simple wooden door of an office. He asked me if I was brave enough to turn the handle. I can't turn it. If I open that door, the man in the gray coat will get out. He'll find her again. The doctor shook his head. He said the man in the gray coat isn't the one she is afraid of. She is afraid of the silence. She has been waiting outside this room for 2 years. She is the one who heard the guards. She is the one who told Miller to wait. I asked him how he knew all of that. He smiled, and it was the first time he looked kind. I know, because I am the part of you that still loves her, Caleb. I am the part that wants to go home. The intercom crackled again. It was the woman's voice. She whispered my name. Not subject, 402. Not Caleb. She called me her brother. The walls of the office began to peel away like old wallpaper. Behind them, I didn't see a control room or a city. I saw the white padded walls of a single room and a small window. I looked at the doctor one last time. He was almost transparent. He told me that his job was done. He had led me to the edge. He said that from here, I had to walk alone. No more protectors. No more men in gray. Just a man and his sister. I asked him what would happen to him. He whispered that he would always be in the library of my mind if I ever needed to talk. And then he was gone. Just a silver pen hitting the floor. The pen didn't make a sound. It was just a memory. I was standing in the center of a small square room. The floor was soft. The walls were white. The lights were steady and warm. I walked to the small window in the door and looked out. There was no Miller, no scientists. Just a hallway and a woman sitting on a wooden bench. She looked up and her eyes were full of tears. She stood up and walked toward the glass. I pressed my hand against the glass. The woman outside did the same. Her fingers were trembling. I looked for the doctor behind her, but the hallway was empty. I asked her where he went. She didn't answer with a medical report. She just whispered my name. She told me there was no doctor. There never was. She said I had been standing in that room for 2 years, talking to the air. I looked back at the empty chair and finally understood. The doctor was just me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The office, the mahogany desk, the silver pen. They were just layers of a dream I built to stay sane. I looked at my sister through the glass. Her name is Sarah, not a victim from a ledger, not a witness from the docks, just my sister. She told me that the night at the docks wasn't a conspiracy. I had a breakdown in the rain, and she was the one who found me. She wasn't running from a monster. She was trying to bring me home. But the man in the gray coat, I saw him. Sarah shook her head. She said the gray coat belonged to our father. I had been wearing it for weeks. I was the one clutching the rusted key. I was the one talking about a ledger that was actually just an old coloring book from our childhood. Every villain I fought and every hero I created was just a different mask for the same broken soul. I looked down at my hands. I wasn't a witness. I was just lost. Sarah told me that Miller wasn't a director of a secret facility. He was our neighbor who called the ambulance the night of the fire. I had turned everyone from my past into characters in a thriller because the truth was too quiet. The truth was just a boy who couldn't save his father and a man who couldn't face the silence. I asked her if the Blackwood Foundry was real. She said it was the name of the old heating company. The one that failed the winter we lost everything. I felt the last of the shadows dissolve. The protector, the man in gray, the doctor. They were all retreating into the corners of my mind. They were the guards I hired to keep the grief from reaching me. But the grief was already inside. I asked Sarah why she stayed, why she sat on that bench for 700 days. She said it was because she knew the real Caleb was still in there, somewhere behind the mahogany desk and the imaginary files. I looked at the small room around me. It didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like a chrysalis, a place where I had been waiting to be born again. I asked her if I could come out now. She wiped her eyes and nodded. She said the real doctors were ready. If I was no more interrogations, no more secrets. Just the long, slow walk back to the person I used to be. I reached for the door handle. This time, it was there. Solid and cold. The bolts slid back with a heavy metallic click. The door opened and the air of the hallway hit me. It didn't smell like smoke or old books. It smelled like floor wax and evening air. I stepped out, and the floor didn't vibrate. The lights didn't pulse. For the first time in 20 years, the world was just the world. I walked toward Sarah, and she didn't look like a shadow. She looked like home. I reached out and touched her arm. She was warm. She led me toward the exit. We passed the silver plaque on the wall. It didn't say Blackwood Group. It said St. Jude's Institute, a place for people who have lost their way in the dark. I realized that the mind is a beautiful, terrifying architect. It will build a whole empire just to protect a single heart from breaking, but you can't live in a fortress forever. Eventually, you have to let the walls crumble so the sun can reach the ruins. We stepped through the front doors. The city was loud and bright and indifferent. It didn't care about my ledgers or my conspiracies. It was just moving on. I looked at the rusted key in my hand. I didn't need it to unlock a mystery anymore. I just needed it to remember that I survived. I handed it to Sarah. She tucked it into her pocket and took my hand. We started walking. No one followed us. No one was watching from the glass. I looked back at the building one last time. I could almost see the doctor standing in the window of the 3rd floor. He wasn't writing in a notepad. He was just waving goodbye. I realized then that I didn't need to kill my shadows. I just needed to stop letting them hold the pen. The war inside my head was over. Not because I won, but because I finally stopped fighting. I took a deep breath, and for the first time, it didn't taste like ash. The car ride was quiet. Sarah didn't ask me questions. She didn't try to fill the silence with explanations. She knew that I was still adjusting to the weight of the sky. I watched the street lamps flicker past, each one a tiny sun in the dark. I thought about the protector. I wondered if he was still in there, sleeping, waiting for the next storm. I realized that he wasn't a monster. He was just a version of me that was too brave to be real. Every mind has its own gray coat, its own shield against the wind. We all build stories to explain the things we can't endure. Some of us build conspiracies. Some of us build walls. But the story only has power as long as you believe you are the victim. The moment you realize you are the author, everything changes. You can choose to write a tragedy, or you can choose to write a recovery. I am choosing to write the next chapter with my eyes open. We arrived at her house, a small place with a yellow door. It wasn't a foundry, it wasn't a vault. It was just a house with a porch and a garden that needed weeding. I stepped inside, and the quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt like an invitation. I saw a photo on the mantel. It was me and Sarah and our father. He wasn't a traitor. He was just a man who loved his kids. He looked happy. I realized I'd forgotten what he looked like when he wasn't in the smoke. I sat on the sofa and felt the texture of the fabric. It was real. I looked at the window and saw the moon. It wasn't a spotlight. It was just the moon. I thought about the thousands of people who might be sitting in their own padded rooms right now. Not in a hospital, but in their own minds. Talking to doctors that don't exist. Fighting wars that ended years ago. I wanted to tell them that the door is already unlocked. You just have to stop guarding it. Peace isn't the absence of voices. It is knowing which voice is yours. It is the moment you stop running from the fire and realize you are the one holding the water. I am Caleb, just Caleb. No designates, no subjects, no shadows. I have a long way to go and a lot of memories to sort through. But for the first time in my life, I am not afraid of the dark. Because the dark is just where the light starts. If you are following this journey, I hope it reminds you of your own hidden strength. The mind can be a labyrinth, but you are the architect who built it. That means you are also the only one who knows the way out. Don't be afraid to look in the mirror, even if the reflection feels like a stranger at first. Keep looking. Eventually, the masks will fall away and you will finally see the person you were always meant to be. The one who survived. The man in the gray coat is gone. The doctor has closed his files. The ledger is just a handful of childhood drawings. It's funny how the things that terrified us as children can become the tools we use to save ourselves as adults. I am going to keep this rusted key. Not to open a door, but to remind me that even the most broken things can still hold their shape. You are more than your trauma. You are the author of what happens next. Tomorrow, I will wake up and there will be no red lights. No intercoms. No hidden observers. Just the sound of the birds and the smell of a new day. It will be a normal morning, and that is the greatest victory of all. To be present, to be here. If you are struggling with your own shadows, remember that even the deepest night eventually has to give way to the sun. You just have to stay awake long enough to see the dawn. The world changed while I was gone, but the important things stayed the same. Love, truth, the courage to speak. I am putting the pen down now. My story isn't over, but the mystery is. I am not a witness anymore. I am a participant in my own life. And I think I am finally ready to see what the next page looks like. Thank you for walking through the dark with me. I hope you find the courage to tell your own truth too. Good night, Caleb. I whispered the words to myself in the mirror, and this time no one answered back. The reflection just smiled. A real smile that reached the eyes. I turned off the light, and the room stayed quiet. No smoke, no mirrors. Just me, home. We all have a story worth telling, and a light worth finding. I hope you find yours. Until we meet again in the next story, keep moving forward. The light is closer than you think. Goodbye for now.